How do we bring people together when society is breaking apart? Today, I'm delighted to give you a sneak preview of my new book, Stepping Forward, A Positive Practical Path to Transform Our Communities and Our Lives. You can order it right now on Amazon. And hi, I'm Rich Harwood. Welcome to another edition of Harwood Half Hour. It's good to have you with us. I'm coming to you from my office in Bethesda, Maryland. Shoot me a message and let me know that you can hear me, or tell me where you're coming in from today. My question for you today is this. From where you're sitting, what do you think it will take to bring people together when society is breaking apart? What do you think it'll take to bring people together when society is breaking apart? You know, every once in a while I depart from the normal format of these Harwood Half Hours. You know, usually I lay out some ideas, I lay out a challenge, and then I say, here are 3 things you can do to take action on this challenge. Today I'll do a little bit of that, but really what I want to focus on is talking about this new book, because I thought it'd be exciting to talk about this launch of this new book that just came out in terms of pre-orders, and that we'll be launching a campaign starting October 1st. You know, I wrote this book because as I travel around the country, you've told me how frustrated you are with what's happening in our communities and in our country, in your communities and in our country. You've told me that you're tired of the mistrust and the broken promises that we keep seeing. You've told me that we're not making enough progress on the challenges that really matter in people's lives. And you've asked me, what is it that we can do to make more progress? And what is it that we can do to be better? What is it that we can do to bring out the best in us, the best of us? And that's what this book's about. You know, you've also told me that you're sick and tired of the frustration, that you want to reject the frustration, you want to reject the gridlock, you want to reject the cynicism that's marking our communities and our country today. And that you know none of us can go it alone on our own, that you know, as I said, we can do better, and that you believe that we've got to find better ways to work together. So this book, Stepping Forward, A Positive Practical Path to Transform Our Communities and Our Lives, which, as I said, you can order on Amazon, you can pre-order on Amazon right now, is a call. It's a call to all of us that, first and foremost, that we don't need to accept what's happening in the country today, and that there is a more positive, practical path forward that we can take, a more inclusive, a more hopeful path. And that this book, people often ask me, who is this book for? Well, it's for you. It's for all the folks I've been working with over the last 30 years, all the folks that our work has spread to in 50 states now, into about 40 countries. It's for nonprofit folks, it's for people who work in community foundations, it's for people who work in the arts, it's for clergy and people who work in faith institutions, it's for journalists and government officials, it's for educators. You know, it's basically for anyone who has a connection to society in the work that they do, the work that you do. It's for any of us, it's for any of you who care about what's happening in our country and who believe and who want to find a more hopeful path forward. And so here's the thing. Let me just spend a couple of minutes talking about, you know, if we want to move forward, I think we've got to be really clear about where we are starting from. I think there's a kind of, and I outline this in the book that I hope you'll read, there's a kind of noise and confusion that's enveloping all of us and that's frustrating us to no end. And I happen to think that there are 4 critical forces that are acting on us and that are creating this noise and confusion. The first of the 4 forces is this, that there's a kind of winning at all costs that's taken over our society. You know, some of you know, many of you know that by the time I was 23, I'd worked on 20 political campaigns, and I decided to no longer work on them because I was so frustrated by them. That was back in the 80s and 90s, and things, as you know, have only gotten worse. gosh, we're experiencing it every which way right now with the president sending out these crazy tweets and Congress going nuts. And there is a kind of, this sense that people will do anything to simply win. And, in the book, I asked this question, win for what? Win for whom? Is it simply, it seems, only for their own self-aggrandizement, for their own position? And it seems to me we've got to get back to winning for the common good, winning to make community a common enterprise again. There's got to be something larger than just ourselves that we're fighting for every day. The second force that's acting upon us is that, as you know and you experience every day, our society is separating at the seams. We are hunkering down into what might be thought of as tribes. We're hunkering down into groups. We watch news that simply affirms and confirms what we already believe. We're on the internet every day with groups that are like us, are like-minded. And we're just separating. More and more of us, all the researchers show, are moving to areas where there are more people like us, where we're separating from one another. And this separation, it seems to me, is making it more and more difficult for us to come together and get things done. It's making it more and more difficult for us to believe in one another. And this book is about how we fight against that and what we can do in practical ways to address that. The third thing, the third force that's creating this kind of noise and confusion around us and making us a bit crazy is that our public square has gotten more crowded than ever before. Now, in some ways, in many ways, I think this is something to celebrate. It's that more of us have a voice, more of us believe that we can have or hope to have an impact. But here's the thing. So many of us today are angry and frustrated. So many of us are aggrieved. We have grievances about what's happened in our lives. And the more of us who are angry and frustrated and aggrieved who are coming into the public square to be heard and to be seen, we're all now talking past one another. We're not even talking to each other. It's like we can't even hear each other. And so the thing is, how in God's name can we move forward together and make community a common enterprise if we can't even see and hear one another in a public square that is increasingly crowded, increasingly noisy, increasingly aggrieved? And it seems to me that we've got to be able to do something about that to make a better go of our society if we're going to get on a more hopeful path. And then the fourth force that's acting upon us today is the profound sense of mistrust in our leaders and organizations and institutions. And this runs the gamut, everything from our faith institutions to our political institutions, to government institutions. And unfortunately, and you know this, unfortunately, it includes many of us who work in local communities, the nonprofits, the community foundations, the arts groups, all who are saying they're working in the community's interest, but as you know, too often we've turned inward and we're more interested in our own survival than the civic health of our communities. And so these four forces, winning at all costs, separating at the seams, this sense of our public square being filled with more and more voices that are aggrieved and fighting for attention, and this profound loss of trust in our leaders and our organizations. This, frankly, it's a mess. And we know this, and you know this, and when I see you in your local communities, when I talk to people in our work with folks across the US and in other countries, we're all talking about this. And the question is, what can we do? I don't think we should simply sit back and wallow in this mess. I don't think we have to accept it. In fact, increasingly, I believe we need to stand up and step forward and reject what's happening and blaze a different course. And here's the thing. Fundamentally, I believe that the basic change, the fundamental change we need in our society needs to start in our local communities. But in order for that change to occur, we've got to turn outward and we've got to get on a different path. And when we do, I am convinced, not because I read it in a book that I wrote or someone else wrote, but because I've seen it, and I do write about this in the book, that we can generate expanding ripples of change throughout our communities and throughout our country. And through these ripples of change that we're creating, we can restore our can-do spirit. And so what I'm calling for in this book is that we start the fundamental change that we need in our local communities, that we turn outward and get on a new path, that we engender ripples of change expanding from that work that we're doing, and that through these ripples and through our efforts, we can restore our can-do spirit. In the book, to do this, this book isn't about theory. It's about my experience working over 30 years with many of you and others in all our states in the US and in other countries. I lay out 7 principles about what you can do and what we collectively need to do to get on this more hopeful path. 7 principles. I won't go through all of them now. You can read the book. I hope you'll pre-order it on Amazon. But the principles deal with how we can rediscover what we share in common amid our real differences and divisions, and how we can actively build on those things moving forward. I think we have to rediscover what we share in common, and we have to learn how to build on what we share in common in order to get moving. The book talks about, one of the principles is how we can value the human spark and revalue the innate capacities that we have within our communities. I happen to believe that we have much of the know-how, the capacities, the wherewithal in our local communities, and that we need to figure out how to bring more people to the table to tap into their capacities and to move forward together. Which leads me to another principle, that I think we need a new sense of shared responsibility in our country. And the book talks about how we can do that in practical ways. And I think another principle is, I think we need to figure out how we can create new shared can-do narratives that give us a sense of possibility and hope, that tell us and show us that we are all builders and shapers and co-creators in this work that we need to do in our local communities. And so in the book, I lay out these 7 principles that are ways in which we can counter the forces that I mentioned earlier before that I think are taking us down the wrong path. I think we can get on a better path, a new path, a more hopeful path. And these 7 principles show us how we can do that, show you how you can do that. And then here's another thing about the book that I think is really important. And this runs through all of our work that so many of you have been involved in. And that is that I think each of us, and now I'm just talking to you as an individual, that each of us, that you in this work, we've got to show up differently. We've got to step forward differently. And so the book actually starts with a reflection that's rooted in my 3 favorite words in the Bible. Now, this isn't a book about religion or religious faith or even my faith, but it is about our collective faith and our civic faith. And I think each of us need to answer the call of these 3 words. Here I am, when God calls out to Moses, and Moses is at the burning bush and he answers, here I am. I think in our own way, in our own secular way, we've got to step forward and answer the call, here I am. I'm ready to make myself visible. I'm ready to be present. I'm ready to be awake. I'm ready to do the work that needs to be done. I'm ready, in essence, to account for myself for what I need to do. And so while the book lays out these 7 principles, it also lays out how you as an individual can step forward and make these 7 principles real in your life, in your work, in your community, and how you can step forward with the courage that you're going to need to put a stake in the ground around what you value and around these 7 principles, and about how you can step forward with courage and do it with a sense of humility. Because courage alone can lead to hubris and arrogance and lead us down the wrong path. And humility opens us up to know that we can't go it alone, that we need each other, that community needs to be a common enterprise. And so A lot of the book also talks not only about these 7 principles, but about how you can step forward with courage and humility to make the choices you need to make, the intentional choices you need to make community a common enterprise and for us to get on a more hopeful path. And so what is it that you can do moving forward? Normally I talk about 3 things you can do to move forward on the particular issue that I'm talking about. So today I have 3 different things that you can do that deal with this book. One, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is that you can pre-order it. You can pre-order it on Amazon and help us. I just want to be clear about this. One of the reasons why we're launching the pre-order campaign now, as opposed to just when the book is available on October 1st, is because it's really important that we move up the rankings on Amazon so that Amazon uses their algorithms to push more and more people to the book when they get on Amazon's platform. So pre-ordering this book is a really important thing, not only for you to get the book, but for you to help other people find the book on Amazon when they go there. Second, you can bring me to your community. I'm starting a 2-year speaking tour as part of a national campaign to talk about these ideas. Now, I just want to say this campaign, a lot of book tours are about getting people to listen to the author. That's not what this is about. This campaign is about engaging you and others in your community to step forward, to recognize that they have the power and the wherewithal and the wisdom to get on this more hopeful path, that they themselves with you and with others can activate these 7 principles in your community, that we don't need to wait because we can't afford to wait for Washington, D.C. to get their act together, even many of our state capitals, that the change that we need, as I said before, needs to start in our local communities, and we need to turn outward and get on this new path. And when we do that, we can generate more ripples of change, not only within our own communities, but across our communities, and we can restore our can-do spirit in our country. And so pre-order the book on Amazon, help us get up the ratings on Amazon and get the book yourself. Bring me to your community to talk about these ideas and to engage others in stepping forward in your community. And then the last thing is on October 1st, when we launch this campaign, we're going to be laying out other things that people can do in their communities with this book and with other materials so that we can all take greater control to shape our futures in our communities. One idea I just want to mention today, which you can actually act on today, is that we're going to be making a call for campaign captains in communities who can bring people together to talk about these ideas, to read the book together, and to begin to move forward together. If you want to be one of these campaign captains, just email me at rharwood@theharwoodinstitute.org. I promise to get back to you. We'd love for you to join this campaign. We need for you to join this campaign. And most of all, your community and communities all across the U.S. need these campaign captains to activate more people, and importantly, to bring more allies together so that you have allies and other people have allies to do the work that we need to do in our local communities to get this country on a better path, a more hopeful path, a more inclusive path. So write me to become a campaign captain. You can do it right now. You don't need to wait. rharwood@theharwoodinstitute.org. I'm expecting your email. Send it to me. I'll write you back. I promise. I promise. And so just to conclude, here's my hope for you today. Here's my hope for you today. My hope for you today is that you step forward with the courage and humility that we need, that you need, to rediscover what we share in common again amid our real differences and divisions in this country, and to actively build upon it, and to help you and to help us get on a more hopeful path. That's my hope for you today. And so this is another episode of Harwood Half Hour. Thanks for joining me. As you know, it's our 30th anniversary this year that we're celebrating. In celebrating this anniversary, we've made a commitment to double down, not on just touting what we've done and celebrating all the good things that have happened. But more importantly, much more importantly, we have recommitted ourselves to finding better ways to support you in your efforts to bring about a more hopeful society, a more inclusive society in your community and in communities all across the country. This book is part of that effort. As you know, our work is rooted in a philosophy of civic faith and in a practice of turning outward. These ideas and this practice have spread to all 50 states in the US and to about 40 countries around the world. If you want to know more about our work, go to theharwoodinstitute.org. I hope you'll share this Harwood Half Hour with your colleagues, with your friends, with your family, so that more people can know about this book, not simply because I want people to buy my book, but because I believe we've got to get on a better path. And I know from my experience in working with so many of you and others that there is a way for us to do that. I lay that out in this book. You can order the book, you can bring it and get others to read it too. And as part of that, I need you to share this episode of Harwood Half Hour with your friends and colleagues and family. Join me in 2 weeks on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time for another episode of Harwood Half Hour. Until then, pre-order the book, get others to read it, and be well. Thanks so much for joining me.